All right, it is 7:28. We're going to call the meeting to order for the organizational meeting of the Economic Development Authority of the City of Crystal on January 5th, 2021. And first, we will do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Adams?
Here.
Commissioner Banks?
Here.
Commissioner Budiszewski?
Here.
Commissioner Cummings?
Here.
Commissioner Kaiser?
Here.
Commissioner LaRoche?
Here.
And Commissioner Parsons.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And I'm looking here, the oath of office was administered to Commissioners Adams, Budiszewski, Cummings, and LaRoche. Do we repeat that tonight?
Yes.
Okay, and Chrissy, will you be doing this?
Yes, I will, Commissioner.
Amazing how you forget after 4 years. Thank you.
If I could have Commissioner Adams please step down.
And defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And will obey the laws of the state of Minnesota.
And obey the laws of the state of Minnesota.
And the ordinances of the city of Crystal.
The ordinances of the city of Crystal.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Could I have Commissioner LaRoche please step down.
I, Nancy LaRoche, solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States and the state of Minnesota, that I will in all respects observe the provisions of the city charter and the ordinances of the city of Crystal, and will faithfully discharge my duties of the office of Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority to the best of my judgment and abilities, so help me God. Thank you.
I, John Budiszewski, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States and of the state of Minnesota, and that I, in all respects,
Observe the provisions of the city charter
will observe the provisions of the city charter
and the ordinances of the city of Crystal.
and the ordinances of the city of Crystal, and will faithfully discharge my duties
to the office of Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority.
to the office as Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority
To the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability,
And I do this under the penalties of perjury.
and I do this under the penalties of perjury. Thank you.
Commissioner Cummings, if you could please step down.
I, David Cummings,
Solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and will obey the laws of the United States
and will obey the laws of the United States
and the state of Minnesota.
and the state of Minnesota,
That I will in all respects
that I, in all respects,
observe the provisions of the
observe the provisions of the city charter
and the ordinances of the city of Crystal.
and the ordinances of the city of Crystal.
And I will faithfully discharge my duties
In the office of Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority
as Officer Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
and I do this under penalties of perjury.
and I do this under penalties of perjury. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chrissy, and congratulations, everyone. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda item, our election of officers for 2021. And I have to say, I'll miss never having to use that gavel that was presented to me 4 years ago. Or 2 years ago, that was it. We have, with that, I'm just going to flip to the text here. And it says here, on January 5th, the EDA will hold its annual organizational meeting at which the members will nominate and elect officers for 2021. And you can see the following page that was in your packet for the mayor's recommendation slate of officers for 2021 and a table showing the officers for the preceding 10 years. Another note is that any EDA member may, by a single motion, place into nomination a slate of EDA officers, whether the mayor's recommended slate or a different slate. If the motion receives a second, then the slate can be approved in one vote. Sound good? And any discussion or questions, comments, motions? John?
I'll make a motion accepting the slate of candidates as is.
Okay, and I suppose I should read that as is, shouldn't I? That
That'd be
might be
great.
helpful for our viewing audience here. We have EDA officers for 2020, president, under the mayor's recommended slate of officers. President is Olga Parsons, vice president Brendan Banks, secretary Therese Kaiser, and treasurer, myself, Nancy LaRoche. So thank you, John, for your motion. Do we have a second? Brendan?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brendan. All those in favor, we will do a roll call vote. Right? Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Adams,
Aye.
Commissioner Banks,
Aye.
Commissioner Budiszewski,
Aye.
Commissioner Cummings,
Aye.
Commissioner Kaiser, Commissioner LaRoche,
Aye,
and Commissioner Parsons.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
and thank you very much. So with that, my duties as leading the meeting is over, and I will turn the gavel rhetorically to Olga. Or figuratively, is it? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, moving on then. Thank you, Nancy. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from December 1st, 2020 meeting. And any discussion on the minutes? Commissioner Adams.
I'd like to make a motion to approve December
All right,
1st meetings.
looking for a second. Nancy?
I'll second.
Okay, we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Adams,
Aye.
Commissioner Banks,
Aye.
Commissioner Budiszewski,
Aye.
Commissioner Cummings,
Aye.
Commissioner Kaiser,
Aye.
Commissioner LaRoche,
Aye.
and Commissioner Parsons.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the presentation, development update and 2021 work program preview. And John?
All right, thank you, Madam President. I wanted to start off by saying Happy New Year to everyone. It's been 2020, as you all know, was quite a year. And the first part of the presentation will be sort of a recap or a status update for projects that may or may not have been EDA related, but were ones that you saw as city council members and may have may have forgotten about simply because so much has happened since they were approved perhaps almost a year ago. So that'll be the first thing. And then some upcoming projects that we anticipate will be coming before the council or the EDA or both in 2021. And then an update on a couple small, highly visible properties that I know many of you have been getting questions about. And then finally, I'll run through a preview of the work program, which we would be bringing back to you on the first meeting in February for approval. So next slide, please, Matt. So the first one I want to talk about is 3501 Douglas. This is the former office building just south of where Milton's is, south of 36th. The office building has been vacant now for a couple of months, and we expect that they're going to be demolishing that building and the rental house that's kind of up the hill behind it within the next month or two, and they will start construction ASAP afterwards. Completion of this 32-unit assisted living memory care facility is expected by the fall of this year. Next one is 5260 West Broadway. It's Midwest Water Sports. You may recall this one. This will be it'll be a three-way tie for the tallest building in Crystal at 50 feet. It's a giant boat storage addition, but it is in about the perfect location for that because it backs up to the BNSF railroad tracks in an already industrial area. So the architect is working on construction plans, and they expect to submit for their building permit very soon, and they want to get it built and done before the fall because, of course, that's when the boats will need to be moving into the building. Next slide, please, Matt. This is one that was recently approved and is now underway. Kevitt Excavating is doing a building addition at 3335 Pennsylvania. And next item is the fire damaged strip mall at 5656. That fire occurred more than a year ago. The new water service for the fire sprinkler system was installed a couple of months ago, and they are now working on the fire sprinkler system in the building. You may recall the EDA did agree to finance up to $100,000 of that cost for 5 years at no interest. And they expect to be done in the first quarter of 21. And some good news is that the owners of Vientiane Restaurant have said they are going to reopen in their old location once this is all done. And then this is the next item at 5208 Hanson Court is not one that you've seen before, but we just wanted to give you a preview to be expecting the site and building plan application sometime in 2021, probably in the spring. A local resident has purchased that property, the former Crystal Auto Parts, and is going to be doing some type of new building that would be consistent with the light industrial zoning, but we don't yet have a submittal to share with you. But that is something that will be coming up soon. The next item here is the proposed 53-unit mixed income apartment building that Woda Cooper Companies was proposing to build on the vacant lots just north of Big Louie's on West Broadway. We learned in December of last year that it did not receive a tax credit award, and so the developer has said they intend to reapply this summer for a tax credit award that would be for 2022 construction. In the meantime, they are trying to negotiate an extension of their purchase option to get through that application process. So that's where that project is at. The developer is also talking to us about some other sites in the town center area. Next slide, please, Matt. So that leads to the next slide, which is a couple of other potential development sites that I think we've talked about before. As you know, Ron Clark Construction is exploring the potential for redeveloping the north side of Bass Lake Road across from Becker Park. We just had a Zoom meeting with them last week, and they are getting some more detailed information together, and we expect to bring that back to the EDA for discussion around probably in February 2nd or maybe the February 16th meeting. And if it all looks like they want to move ahead, they would submit their TIF application and their planning and zoning application in the spring with an eye towards starting construction by this time next year. The other property that you have talked about before is the Crystal Gallery Mall. That has generated a lot of interest from developers, but it's unclear as to whether the mall owner has seen a proposal from a developer that they're willing to accept. So that's something that we aren't privy to, those direct conversations, but we know that a number of developers are very interested in doing something different with that property. Part of the thing going on here is there's still a lot of uncertainty because of the pandemic. Obviously on the commercial real estate side, because no one really knows what's going to happen to retail and restaurants permanently once we emerge from the pandemic, but also even on the residential side. There's just so much uncertainty, and as I'm sure you all know, people in finance especially don't like uncertainty. So I think that's delaying everything and slowing everything down. But that said, there's a lot of capital on the sidelines right now that's going to be looking for investment somewhere. And we think we're ready for that once some of this uncertainty clears away. So hopefully we'll have a lot more on this to talk about later in the year. So, next slide. So a couple of updates on some small properties. The Burger King at 5354 West Broadway. The situation here is that the property owner and the Burger King franchisee, the tenant, are two different parties, and they are both located out of state in different states. So when the Burger King franchisee abruptly closed the restaurant and removed the fixtures and kind of took off, because they still have a lease on the property, the owner is not in a position to market the property for new users. We have a lot of ideas, and we've talked to the owner, and the owners expressed their appreciation that we would be willing to help them do that in terms of trying to find some potential users for that property so it doesn't stay vacant for too long. But the owner is not in a legal position where they can really do that yet. So until they resolve the existing lease they have, that property is probably going to have to remain kind of in its current boarded up condition. The other property is 3600 Douglas Drive. It's the former Pizza Hut. That property did sell earlier this year to a local real estate a person with a very good track record in real estate. I don't want to say any more than that, but this party is a Twin Cities investor who has a record of success, especially with restaurant properties. And while we don't yet know what the plan is for that property, and I think the new owner is probably exploring options. Again, with the pandemic, there's so much uncertainty out there. But at least we know and have made contact with the owner of that property, and we'll hopefully have something more on that going forward. So work program, real quick. I'm really just going to hit the highlights here. We're going to do the planter boxes again. One of the questions that we need to talk about internally is, do we want to do more of them? Because there have been additional businesses that have expressed a desire to sponsor a planter box and add some more of these in certain corridors. But there is a cost, and while we have money in the budget to buy the planter boxes and do all that, it's really a time question because our park maintenance crews have to set these boxes up every spring and take them down every fall, and it's a much more time-consuming process than one might imagine. And so really we have to have that internal conversation about whether we have the capacity to do more of these or if we should try to figure out some other beautification strategy. So we will have more on that by the February meeting for you. We're going to continue with having the sentence to serve litter cleanups along our major commercial corridors. That seems to have made a big difference. And we want to continue that, and we have money in the budget to do that. Next slide. And these are three things that were basically deferred because of the pandemic. We wanted to proceed with the facade enhancement incentive using Hennepin County funds, but the county kind of pulled the plug on all of those grant programs because they had to shift all their resources and their attention to the pandemic response. So we don't know when they're going to kind of reopen or reestablish those programs. When they do, if they do, we will certainly seek funding again from them. But unless the county is willing to help, we don't think it's a wise use of our limited EDA funds to do it all ourselves. The other one I want to talk about is the idea of doing some more murals. Again, this is not something that we really have funds to do, but there are various grants that are available that would be channeled through the city or its EDA to try to dress up some of these blank walls in our older commercial areas. A small mural can make a big difference, especially if our only cost, so to speak, is time on the city's part. And then finally, we were basically ready with our town center logo, which you see there in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and to use in development marketing materials, and then the pandemic hit. So we are picking that ball up again, and we are trying to, excuse me, trying to create an identity of our main commercial area at Bass Lake Road and Broadway, similar to the way we did our neighborhoods 20 years ago, and we will resume that effort this year. Next slide. And then finally, disposition of EDA properties. The property at 482456, this is on the Bass Lake Road curve by where the old gas station was. We're still working with MPCA to try to figure out what the status is of the leak site at the old gas station. We don't think there's any reason that we can't sell off or even subdivide our property next door for residential development. But it's complicated by the fact that right now there's a monitoring well on our property. So that has to be closed out and removed, sealed, before we can move forward with selling the property. Across the street and about a half-mile west, the flower shop, the property next to the flower shop at Veracruz and Bass Lake Road, those discussions basically stopped when the pandemic hit. We're going to try again this year. The options there are to sell the lot to them, to incorporate it into their commercial property for future growth, or we could rearrange the lot lines with their cooperation to create a small but still buildable single-family lot. And then finally, the fourplex site, or there used to be a fourplex a long time ago, at 4741 Welcome. As you know, we were not successful in getting development proposals last year, so we reissued the RFP. That's still out there. A couple of builders have expressed interest in it, but they're either finishing up other projects, or again, there's that whole uncertainty thing going on. If we don't have any proposals to bring to you by April, we'll bring that back to you to talk about what our next steps or other options are, and we do have some ideas for different things to do with that lot. Next slide. In the area of 34th and Douglas, we have a couple vacant lots south and west of that property where the assisted living facility is going to be built. These really can't have anything done with them until Edgewood Avenue is extended north of 34th Avenue, if that ever happens, and that would require the cooperation of multiple private property owners. So we'll reevaluate this after the Hampton building is done to see if there's any interest on the part of those other owners, but we will probably need to hold those properties until that interest does emerge. At the northwest corner of 34th and Douglas, we do have a relatively small development site that could have perhaps a small townhome project or a small apartment building. And once 3501 Douglas is under construction, and we know it's really real, then we're going to put out an RFP from developers for that 34th and Douglas site. And then finally, at the southeast corner of 34th and Douglas, we're still waiting for the property owner of the large residential property to the south to be ready to sell, and that would also create another potential site that would make sense to market to developers. Next slide. 3240 Hampshire. You recall this property, we did do a feasibility study on it, and we did find that there is a substantial part of it that has decent soils for construction, but the cost and unknowns related to extending utilities and the driveway from the Georgia cul-de-sac to this property are such that it's really not feasible to develop it at this time. It only would be feasible if the other property owners further north also wanted to develop their vacant land so that the street could be extended to serve more than just one property. And we will have to continue to hold that property until that happens. And the last two properties, 3556 Major is currently for sale for new home construction. It's a very narrow lot, very challenging lot, but it is available for sale. And then 3409 June, we're going to try to find one of the owners across the alley to purchase it and just sort of be done with that one, since the development of that strip of vacant lots doesn't look like it's ever going to happen. So next slide, last slide. So again, we'll bring the work program back to you on February 2nd. Do you have any questions or any additional things you would like us to explore between now and then?
Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, thank you, Olga. I had a question on the Hampshire property, 3240. Would it be feasible to sell to potential owners in that area who just might want to expand their lot rather than just sit there? Is that a feasible option? Did anyone express interest who lives in that area?
No one has expressed interest. We did talk about that being one of the options if it was found to be infeasible.
Yeah.
The owner, the logical owner at 3244 was kind of, I mean, from their point of view, and on the one hand, it's nice to have this kind of free open space that you don't have to maintain. Although they have been doing some maintenance of it just for their own benefit, but there's that. But the other side of that is they could have site control, right, if they bought it. So there isn't any strong interest. That's something we could certainly approach them about. I don't know if I'd be comfortable selling it to any of the other owners to the north. And furthermore, one of the vacant lots to the north, I don't know if you recall all of this, because you really get into the weeds, but there was a change of ownership that happened, and the house on Hampshire sold, but the sale failed to include the vacant lot behind it. So now that's owned by some out-of-state entity that has not responded to our attempts to get them to care. So it's kind of that whole area is going to take some time to resolve itself. And our recommendation would be, since there's really no harm in it, just continuing to hold our 3240 Hampshire lot, because development could certainly emerge in that area, and we don't want our property to prevent that, since it would be the first in line north of the current cul-de-sac.
Okay, thanks, John. And one last question, if I could, on the Burger King and Pizza Hut properties. Do we know when those leases are up for each one? Did they?
In Pizza Hut, there's no lease anymore. The person who bought it owns it outright, so
that's right.
it's unencumbered, which is great. They're just, again, this local Twin Cities-based investor knows the business and is being very deliberate about figuring out what the best way to use that property is. In the case of the Burger King, we do not know when the lease expires. I mean, I would guess that the owner of the property is negotiating some type of termination with the leaseholder, because they don't want their property sitting there, but I can't speak for them and don't know for sure.
Not sure. Okay,
So.
thanks. It's been interesting on social media, hearing feedback from residents and what they'd like to see there.
Well, if I may.
Go ahead, absolutely.
One suggestion on that, because I've seen the same stuff. Most companies know where they want to be already, right? They have their own demographic marketing research departments that know where the household incomes are, the number of households. I mean, they're looking at rooftops, right? So they already know where they want to be. The one thing that can change that can move that needle a little bit, is if people from a local area start calling and emailing those companies to say, we'd love to have you at this location. Okay. So they're not going to listen to a city telling them that, right? Because, of course the city wants development, right? Yeah. But if the residents, in other words, their potential customers, talk about, we'd love to have business X in this location or in this city, that can help at least bring it to their attention in a way that outreach from the city cannot. And I mean, just so you know, we have done some of that this year to Caribou and others, not about this particular site yet, because we're not in a position for that yet, but other potential locations around Crystal. And there have been some other companies too. And while we've been able to make those contacts, you know that it's their potential customers that are going to drive their business decision. So if the public is looking for some way to help, that would be the most effective thing for them to do.
Good point. Thank you. That's a very good point. All right. Any other discussion or questions on this item? Okay. Thank you so much, John. Very thorough, and looking forward to February then. On to item number 7, other business. Do we have any other business? Okay. Nope. Then the last item is adjournment. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Budichevsky?
So moved.
All right, looking for a second.
I'll second.
Therese, second it, and roll call vote.
Commissioner Adams?
Aye.
Commissioner Banks?
Aye.
Commissioner Budichevsky?
Aye.
Commissioner Cummings?
Aye.
Commissioner Kaiser?
Aye.
Commissioner LaRoche?
Aye.
And Commissioner Parsons?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Looks like we are adjourned.
Have a good night, everyone.
Oh, yeah. Talking to the whole meeting.